Hey, what's up guys? So you know the big firmware update we got recently for the Redline 360C? The one that helps to improve the response time, the false alert filtering, the arrow behavior, etc.? Well, it looks like Escort is finally now starting to roll out these similar updates for other detectors. As of today, we now have a comparable update here for the Max 360 Mark II, as well as the Max 360C Mark II. Furthermore, next week we're also going to be getting the update for the Redline Ci and the Redline Ci 360C, so the custom installed radar detectors, and that's going to be available as of December 9th. And taking a look at the improvements here, it's a lot of the same stuff that we had on the Redline 360C, plus with some additional improvements. Furthermore, Escort has also released some test data to show some numbers on how the updated versions of these Max series detectors now perform. And so in this video, let's go ahead and take a look at all the new improvements here with these updated detectors, as well as my thoughts here on each of the changes, and how the detectors now compare to the competition now that the performance and false alert filtering is much more in line with, I think, how it should be. Now, to start things off, let's begin here first with response time improvements, which was one of the biggest weaknesses here of these detectors. And Escort says that they've improved the response time for all bands, including X, K, and KA, and their KA response times were developed around KA wide, not running the detectors segmented. And if we take a look at their test data, they've got some numbers here for K-band, as well as KA on 33.8, 34.7, and 35.5. And they compare the Escort detector to one of its competitors, which they don't name, as well as the variance with the Escort's updated firmware compared to the previous firmware. And as you can see, the response time here is pretty quick, at less than half a second here for all of the different frequency ranges. Furthermore, if we take a look at the quick trigger test results, you can see that it's nice and responsive here too. They don't actually specify the exact speed of the quick trigger shots, but I'm assuming it's going to be pretty quick. Now, your results may vary, but these numbers here are definitely a big improvement compared to what we saw with the older firmware. Next, they talk about some pop detection improvements, and now the detector should do great against pop, which is all well and good, but practically speaking, I think is kind of irrelevant. Something that is important, though, is that they mention that they've improved the arrow transition times when switching from front to rear, and so now the arrow should be much more accurate to let you know when you've passed a source. Now, the next big change that they talk about is some reduction in blind spot falses and basically overall filtering improvements. And so far, people's initial impressions over in the forum are positive. Now, based on what we know with the Redline 360C, which should behave similarly here, we do again see improved false alert filtering and fewer falses. That said, with these detectors, they tend to filter better when you're running the detectors in auto mode. This will add some additional filtering, particularly at low speeds, though it is pretty aggressive. If you run it in highway mode, you're dependent more on the blind spot filtering, and you do get more falses in these instances. And personally, I've actually been running the detectors in auto mode just to keep them quieter. Speaking of filtering, they've also added a second K-notch, just like we had with the Redline 360C. And this K-notch 2 is specifically designed to help knock out some of the false alerts that you might see from a Dodge Ram TRX truck. We also have the ability now to turn the K-filter itself on or off, and turning it off is going to be giving you improved response time on K-band, while turning it on will give you some additional filtering at the cost of a slight reduction in performance and response time. Now, something that's new here that we haven't yet had on the Redline 360C is that they've now added a KA notch as well. And this is specifically designed to help us deal with some false alerts that you may encounter from certain GM and Chevy vehicles, particularly the infotainment systems inside the car, where as you're driving around with one of these vehicles, your own car can actually cause your detector to false on KA band. And with this new KA notch, it's basically going to be helping to reduce the sensitivity around 33.750 to 35.5. Now, they don't give any details on exactly how much they reduce the sensitivity in these ranges, as well as how wide these notches are. The 33.750 K notch is going to be similar to your MPH guns like the B3. We have a lot of B3s here in the area, and I find those tend to be pretty closely centered to 33.8. And so for that reason, I don't think this is going to be a huge issue to potentially reducing the sensitivity for legitimate police radar guns. That said, the 35.5 K notch, it looks like it's centered right at 35.5 on the nose. And so for that reason, I could see this one being a little bit more risky. So keep this in mind if you do have a lot of 35.5 in your area, though if your own car will continually trigger your detector and have it false into 35.5, at least we have the option now of hopefully knocking out those false alerts reducing the sensitivity to a certain extent, but still actually giving us some alerting, even if we do see reduced detection range against these different KA guns. And then for those of you who are running the Wi-Fi version of the detector, the Max 360C Mark II, and you've got OnStar in your vehicle, Escort has added some fixes here to improve the connection if you're running a Wi-Fi hotspot in your car and you've got OnStar. Now, something that's not really mentioned in their release notes, but is discussed in their testing data, is the fact that Escort has improved not only the response time and the filtering, but also the detection range of these detectors too. And in their test notes, they do compare it here to a competitive detector, though they don't mention what that detector is. And looking over their numbers here for both K-band and KA, it looks like the performance is within a few percentage points of this competitive detector. Now, in my mind, I think maybe the closest competitor, at least based on price, would be something like the Uniden R7. You could consider maybe like the R8W, but that is going to be a much more expensive detector. And that one, I think, competes more with the Redline 360C. We could compare it to the V1 Gen 2, which is going to be, again, comparably priced, though this one I would expect to still outperform the Maxes. But I think with these detectors, if they can perform more in line with the R7, that would definitely be very nice here for the Escort detectors. And now that these updates are out, I'm sure a lot of us are going to go out and start doing a bunch of testing here to see how the updated versions of these detectors fare. Now, here in Seattle, we're getting into the rainy season, so it's not particularly conducive to radar detector testing, but I'm sure a lot of people are going to start going out and doing their testing to see really how this detector stacks up. And with that in mind, what should we expect as far as how these detectors now compare to the competition? Well, I think based on what they're sharing so far, I mean, previously I basically dismissed and all but ignored these detectors, but with their improvements here that should help take care of the response time, that should help fix the arrows and the false alert filtering and stuff, I think they're going to be much more competitive and worth considering again. Now, these detectors are going to be priced around $500 to $600 depending on which model you choose and when they're on sale and whatnot. This is going to be comparably priced to the Uniden R7, and for that detector, we're often running the third-party firmware for it to further improve the detector and the false alert filtering. But for the sake of discussion, let's say the performance is going to be in line with the R7. Well, this detector is now going to be performing reasonably well. The arrows should work properly. The false alert filtering should be good. I've personally been running mostly like the Uniden R9W, and one of the annoyances I've been having with that one is the Mazda CX-5s. I still get so many punch-throughs with those ones, and the way I've been dealing with them is actually just like fully muting all signals in the 24.123 to 24.124 range. And this approach is not ideal. On the other hand, with the Redline 360C, this one seems to do a better job at dealing with those false alerts. Now, others do report issues with the CX-5, with the Redline giving you a bunch of weak alerts. So again, your mileage may vary. The Escorts, again, they're not going to be perfect. They're still going to have some false alerts and punch-throughs with different BSMs and stuff. But, I mean, it seems like it's going to be offering some nice improvements above and beyond what I see with the Unidens. Both of these detectors are going to have Bluetooth, which you can get with the V1 Gen 2, but not with the Uniden. Similarly, if you pick up Escort's laser jammers or ZR6, this is going to be compatible with Escort's radar detectors as well, something that's, again, not true with the R7. You would have to step up to like the R8, for example, or, well, I guess really the R8W until Uniden gets their act together and fixes all the firmware stuff and brings it over to the R8 to really get, well, laser jammer support on the Unidens, versus with the Escort, we have support now here with the ZR6s. But either way, we've got detectors where the performance should be good, the false alert filtering should be good. You have Bluetooth now to go in and change the different settings in the detector, though some of these newest settings are not yet available in Drive Smarter. Escort mentioned that there's an update coming on December 18th that should add some of these newer features here to the apps in our detectors so we can update them from the app instead of having to go into the detector itself. There's Wi-Fi built in here, which can display the speed limit of the road that you're on the detector. We've got laser jammer support, and so I think looking here at the big picture, these detectors now are going to be much more competitive and I think worth considering, which wasn't really the case before. And so if you're considering one of these detectors too, you can order them online now. They're available for $50 off. Additionally, if you currently have one of these detectors, there's two ways to update. You can either do the update over Wi-Fi, though this is a big update and it'll take like 20 to 30 minutes or so to update your detector. And so for that reason, if you prefer, you can update it using your computer. And this I found takes a little over 1 minute. So it's gonna be much, much faster to update over USB than over Wi-Fi, though you can update either way. Now, moving forward, as far as the other detectors that are going to be updated next, Escort actually has an updated list on the forums where they share the different detectors that are going to be updated and in which order. Now, as far as time frames, so far we only know about the Redline Ci 360C and the Redline Ci. Those are again going to be updated next week on December 9th. And then afterwards, at some point, we're going to see updates for the Redline 360C International, the Redline Ci 360C International, the MaxCam 360C, and the Max 4. And with all that in mind, down in the description below, I'm going to have a bunch more information for you. Everything from where you can purchase the new detectors, to where you can grab the latest updates, to where we're discussing the changes and improvements here with the updates and the results that we're seeing, where people are going to be sharing their test results with this updated firmware, etc. And so down in the description below, as always, I'm going to have a bunch more information and links for you. And with that said, good job, Escort, for continuing to work on your detectors and improve things, make some really much needed improvements in my mind here for these detectors. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, assuming everything is going to be performing well, I think these detectors are now actually going to be worth considering again, which wasn't the case before. I'd basically just been dismissing them based on the issues that they've had, but it looks like Escort has really been taking these improvements seriously and bringing over some much needed improvements to their detectors. So got to give credit where credit is due. Good job, Escort. And for those of you guys who have one of these detectors, after you update and start driving around and testing your detector, I would love to hear your feedback, whether you want to share your experiences in the comments to this video below or over onto the forums. Both are going to be great options here. I'm looking forward to getting some seat time here with the updated versions of these detectors, as well as hearing your all experiences on what you find on the road as well. And with that in mind, thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys are all doing great, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.